Hi, this is Lainey Cameron. I am so excited to be here today with Amy Impellizzeri, who not only is an author of 5 novels and 1 nonfiction book, I believe, but is one of the nicest and most supportive authors I know. So I'm so excited to have you here with me today, Amy.
Thank you. That's a very generous compliment. Thank you very much.
And we're going to talk about your latest, your 5th novel. I know how this ends.
Yeah.
I don't, because I'm about half the way through and I'm loving it. It's so good. It's like, there you go. You're so
There we go. Visual aids.
And actually, that reminds me, let me just fix something on the screen. There we go.
Aw, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for bringing the book and reminding me. So it's a really interesting novel. It's a time-bending tale. It's about a young reporter who's swept up in a story about family secrets and twisted fate when time travelers collide. And I have so many questions I'm going to ask you about this, including that it's a paraquel to your first book. And I didn't even know what a paraquel was. So I'm going to ask you about that during this interview.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Okay, so let me start by just putting up a slide so we can talk a little bit about how the reviews of the book are going. There we go. And I loved this quote from Christy Woodson Harvey, who said, "It's a magical tale of love, loss, hope, and redemption. And once again, you prove yourself a standout voice in the fiction world." I thought that was a lovely way to put it. And it pretty much fit with what I'm seeing in all of the reviews. What I'm seeing is people are using the words captivating, intense, obviously time traveling, magical, couldn't put it down, which is my experience, and well worth the wait. Those are some pretty lovely things to have someone say about your book.
It really is. It really is. And this book is so, as you said, it's my 5th novel, right? And so it's the follow-up to my debut, which Lemongrass Hope, which released in 2014. And it was, so then I had in between unrelated novels, totally different novels. And I know how this ends can be read as a standalone, and it was meant to be a standalone as well, but it definitely is a follow-up to Lemongrass Hope. And I always said, and at the time Lemongrass Hope came out, it was really well received, very humbling, but people would often ask me if I was going to write a sequel or if I was going to write a follow-up, and I always said no. I just always felt like that book stood, even though it had somewhat of an open ending, and it wasn't until I started going to book clubs that I understood exactly how open people interpreted the ending, and people had so much to say about the ending that I just really didn't want to trample on that. So I always said that I wasn't going to do a follow-up or a sequel, but then I got an idea. And when I got the idea, and then for the follow-up, I said, okay, well, if I can figure out how this story works, then I would do it. And so it's just been so exciting to see this sort of full circle moment, because it's 10 years. I left my law career not to pursue writing, but I did end up pursuing writing after that. And this has been 10 years, and this is sort of like the full circle moment where now I've written this book that harkens back to my debut. So it's really very symbolic for me, and it's been really exciting to see how people have received it.
Oh, and it's being received so well. I'm adoring it, and I see that other people are loving it. So what is a paraquel? Tell us this. I'm intrigued.
So because Lemongrass Hope was about, and Lemongrass Hope is told, in the beginning it's told in a different point of view, then it sort of switches point of view. And so it's really meant to be sort of like a sliver of time. It's about a woman who is really questioning decisions in her life, all the choices that she's made basically up until then, and she reconnects with a former love, and she gets this sort of unwitting glance at what her life would have looked like had she made other choices. But it is really just a sliver of time. And so I started to think about what would other slivers of time look like for these characters, and if we added other characters, what would that mean? And also, so it really runs alongside Lemongrass Hope. It's not it's not before or after. And also, it's my first chance to tell the story from Ian's point of view. Ian was a main character in Lemongrass Hope, and I had some like really personal opinions about him, and then I found out that readers had all different opinions about him, and I loved the idea of finally telling the story, or a story, from his point of view. So again, it's not a direct sequel, And you don't need to have read Lemongrass Hope to read this, hopefully, but it's kind of like adds to the layers if you've read Lemongrass Hope.
I can confirm that you don't need to have read. I will admit I haven't read Lemongrass Hope. I think I've had it forever, actually, and I can't believe I haven't read it yet. I know I bought
maybe
it.
You'll go read it now.
Early on. So it's going to be on my next list now because you don't need to read it. You definitely don't, but now it makes you want to read it because I want to know.
Yeah,
okay,
that's awesome. Thank you.
So how the heck do you plot a book that has decades going back and forth? I'm not giving anything away, no spoilers here, but there are whole decades of time that kind of you're time traveling back and forth. How on earth did you plot a book like that?
Okay, so I used to not be a plotter. And I used to just, let the story evolve, and I always knew the beginning and the end, and then just really try to find my way there. And this book was obviously different. So this book was definitely my most ambitious in terms of timeline. And I really, I won't say that I was a meticulous plotter for this book, but for sure, I really had to pin down the timelines and really had to sort of write the characters' timelines and sketch those out much more fully before really diving into the writing. But I will say that this book is still on the continuum. The next book that I tackled after this one, which is still not out, I can't no real concrete news about that one yet, was like the end of my spectrum of like, now I'm a plotter. So this book was still in the continuum of like, let's still sort of let this story unfold and let's see what happens. So I really did, and I like to write like that. I really do, because I like to be surprised by the book, and I am one of those crazy writers who loves the process of writing. I have so many friends who hate the process, love having written, and hate the process. And I do love having written, by the way, but I also really love the process of writing. I love those like magical moments where the story really starts to unfold and you really start to understand like, oh, this is what the story's about. And so I did let myself have some of those moments with I Know How This Ends. There's a character, there's some new characters in this story that are new that were not in Lemongrass Hope. Rory is one of them, the journalist. And her story really evolved for me. I really sort of started to understand more about who she was and what her story was as the story evolved. But for Kate and Ian, their timelines and their stories, I really had to map out pretty thoroughly first.
Did you do it on a computer or cards or on a notepad?
Yeah, I do it on computer, but I am not. I have tried Scrivener many, many times, and I'm a Scrivener failure. So I really do it old-fashioned, Google document, and try to kind of like break it into segments, basically.
You're funny. An old-fashioned Google document. That's not very old-fashioned.
I guess not, but it feels like it. When I hear some of my writer friends talk about the very sophisticated ways that they plot out stories, there is a part of my brain still that wants to write everything out on a legal pad, that lawyer brain part of me. But
so this is a good segue into any writing advice for people earlier in their career than you. Any advice you would give?
I really think it's very important to and it's harder now. It's harder and easier to attend a lot of writers' conferences and a lot of writers' workshops and really work on the craft. You and I met through Women's Fiction Writers Association, which was, pivotal to me. I actually discovered the group after I'd written Lemongrass Hope, and I felt like it would have helped me not go down the road that I went with that book that took so long to write, as all of our first books do. And I worked with developmental editors on that book. But then once I finally like sort of learned the world of writing workshops and craft workshops, I started to understand how much that can help you at that early stage of your writing career. And frankly, and the reason I say it's harder and easier now in this world where things have switched to virtual, I have found that people, it's harder to go. You can't go in person to writing conferences right now the way we would love to. But there are so many virtual options open to you now, and conferences have gone virtual that you might have been precluded from going to because of geographic limitations. So in a way, there is sort of unprecedented access to things for the first time. And I think it's really important to try to take advantage of those.
So true. I host Writers Group on Thursday nights on Zoom. And it's the first time for several of the writers in that group that they've ever been part of any group of other writers.
Right.
And it all came about because of COVID, because I posted on Instagram saying I'm having fun hosting groups. It's one way that I still feel connected. And another writer reached out and said, want to do one together? And so it's a really mixed group. It's not all women's fiction. It's actually a really interesting mix of like women's fiction and romance and sci-fi.
I love it. That's
very
great.
cool. We call it a writer support group. We all get online and help each other like stick with it during this really weird time.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That's really great. That's great that you're doing it, and great advice.
So talking of awesome books, have you read anything good recently?
I have been reading nonstop. So I started out in quarantine, like my brain was so fried. I didn't know what I was going to do. And then I immediately started reading. I was writing at the time too. And I just started reading. So I've been reading really diverse books. Like I have been reading every genre. I just grabbed like a couple of books that are next to my nightstand. This is like my just finished pile. This is not a recent book, actually. Christina Loren, Twice in a Blue Moon, I picked up, which I loved. This book is like life-changing if you haven't read this, Untamed by Glennon Doyle. This is a book I keep talking about, and I've been telling everyone I know about this book. It is so fresh and unique and quirky. Other People's Pets by R.L. Maces, about a woman who's an animal empath who can feel animals' emotions, but also their physical pain and feelings. And she's studying to be a veterinarian, but then she gets pulled into the family business, which is burglary. And it sounds so wacky, and it is a little wacky, but super, super fun. And and this is actually what I'm reading right now, The Girl with the Louding Voice, which is
I'm hearing great things about that book. So many good things.
It's so good. It's so good. So, but this is literally the smallest little fraction of the books that are piled up around my room right now. So I've been reading
we've come to the end of our time here, but I want to talk about how readers can connect with you. Before I put up that slide, anything we didn't ask that you want to say?
No, I think that it, like I said, not just in terms of writing workshops, I have found that this time has kind of given, even though it's so hard for authors, it's given readers like this sort of unprecedented access to your favorite authors. So I'm so grateful for readers who have been connecting, and grateful to fellow writers like yourself who have been finding new ways to connect with readers and bringing us along for the ride. So thank you so much.
It's a great way to put it. And let's show people how they can connect with you on Instagram. Your same name, Amy Impellizzeri on Instagram, or your website obviously has got all of your social medias on it. I know you're active on Instagram, and like you said, you love to connect with readers.
So I do. Thank you so much.
Don't underestimate, the authors love when people comment on our stuff. Like I think readers sometimes think that like it's a little intimidating to go like type something to an author, but I love it. Like when people comment even on books that I'm sharing and say what they thought of that book. It's so fun.
Yes, agreed wholeheartedly. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Amy. This has been fun.
Thank you.